Sierra Leone in political standoff. Mayor Aki-Sawyerr defends APC boycott, demands reversal of Electoral Chief Edmond Alpha's appointment. Hello and welcome to BAV Inside Salon on the Bold African Voice, where we bring you deep analysis of the most important political and governance issues shaping Sierra Leone and Africa. I am Ahisatu Kamara Kargbo. Tonight, we examine a growing political controversy that is raising serious questions about democratic trust and electoral credibility in Sierra Leone. Freetown Mayor Yvonne Aki-Sawyerr has publicly defended the All People's Congress decision to withdraw from certain governance processes, insisting that the party will only fully re-engage if the appointment of Edmond Sylvester Alpha as chairman of the Electoral Commission for Sierra Leone is reversed. But what exactly is at stake? Is this simply another political disagreement between the ruling party and the opposition? Or is it a deeper warning sign about the future credibility of Sierra Leone's democratic institutions? And how does this debate compare with similar controversies over electoral commissions across Africa? Stay with us as we break down the facts, the politics, and the implications. At the center of the controversy is the appointment of Edmond Sylvester Alpha as Chief Electoral Commissioner and Chairman of the Electoral Commission for Sierra Leone, ECSL. A decision that has triggered strong objections from the opposition All People's Congress, APC, and deepened political tensions months after the disputed 2023 general elections. And now, Freetown Mayor Yvonne Aki-Sawyerr, one of the most prominent figures within the APC, has taken a firm and public position. The party will only fully re-engage in governance processes if Alpha's appointment is reversed. Her remarks, made during an interview with Liberty Online TV, framed the APC's withdrawal from certain governance engagements not as political theatrics, but as what she describes as a democratic protest against what the party believes are actions undermining electoral credibility and democratic accountability. Let's pause briefly and watch a series of short video clips capturing key moments in this unfolding story. The celebrations of the new ECSL chairman following Parliament's approval, his official swearing-in ceremony, and reactions from the opposition APC, including comments from the mayor of Freetown and minority leader in Parliament, Honorable Abdul Kargbo, explaining why the APC remains firm in its ongoing boycott. We will also hear the advice from the British High Commission and legal insight from lawyer Augustine Sori Sengbe Mara, who argues that the entire tripartite process should have been backed by legislation. These videos are courtesy of Liberty TV Online and Truth Media. When we return, I will break this down with a deeper and more critical analysis of what this situation means for Sierra Leone's democracy and the wider African political landscape. In the meantime, please like, share, comment, and subscribe to the Bold African Voice, because together we amplify Africa's voice.
Around people, they say, 2028, therefore, not they fear football 2028. 2028 is going to be just like any 2023, 2018, or 2012. Like, who don't see all? I mean, I don't see all. We don't see all team. Okay. So, you know, when they put fear in me, so, you know, they threaten himself by election business. This is not my game.
I, Edmond Sylvester Alpha, do hereby in the name of God swear that I will faithfully and fully discharge the duties as Chief Electoral Commissioner Commissioner
and Chairman of the Electoral Commission of Sierra Leone,
and Chairman of the Electoral Commission of Sierra Leone,
and that I will support, uphold, and maintain the Constitution of Sierra Leone as by law established. So help me God.
So help me God.
The question is, when I don't get ultimatum, when I not hear it from the president, and then Alpha don't go through parliament, they don't approve your appointments, which means that I for take the country to the 2028 elections. What's the position of the APC now? Because the country is moving, then una just the one side. What's on a position now when I anger for take the country into elections?
Only one side. Only one side. I don't believe say Edmond Alpha will lead me to the next elections.
He has been approved by Parliament.
That legal procedure, and we just don't start. We don't tell the president say we know they accept that mandate. Let's say 12 parties and go sign. Then 12 parties and they are the part of government that does some of them are just one portfolio match of money account up and down. We don't see the happen. So that we don't accept, and the country is moving. Yes, we are moving. So of us in the APC, we want to see this country continue to be peaceful, that we deliver what we don't promise to people, and then going on to the elections. So what would they say is simple. We don't give 48 hours ultimatum. That has not been respected. Now the party, as I tell you today, by the grace of God, will come with a statement. We don't withdraw members of parliament. We don't tell them they stay out of parliament. That's a one-party state. That the government was telling one party state. That is one. Secondly, we don't also tell we chairman and mayors them and councillors them, but stay off from councils. So and the tripartite and the report and the the unity agreement, then can we go? Don't forget to go after the elections. We don't go to parliament, we don't go to councils. Now because the agreement they come, they say don't go by the agreement. Then can we go there? And so if the agreement is not more respected, why are you fishing for body? Why are you fishing for body? Because if the government don't respect the tripartite report, it also respect the agreement, the national agreement. Why we go to parliament and why we go to council? So we go from government.
So
that's not negotiable.
Chair, withdrawing from governments, how will that stop Edmond Alpha from being the chief electoral commissioner and conducting elections?
Now them don't go approve them. Now one party state today now. And they don't go approve on a parliament now. They don't go approve on a parliament. One party state. They go run the councils one party state. They go run the parliament one party. They go run the country as one party state. So we don't say yes, democracy. They don't clear this country. Democracy is dead. Democracy is dead. Because it is simple. It's very, very, very simple something. The big people of this country say, we don't want Edmond Alpha for league. There's a commission they also already perform. We don't care anything with a parliament. Simple because they don't say they don't get the 2/3 majority in the parliament for approve what you don't put in that constitution. Then make the go rush up for go approve Edmond Alpha. So every day Edmond Alpha will continue for the day since after the other elections. And we don't want, because we this country don't make it go perfect. We don't want this country to push cash. We want this country to be peaceful. Even if it adopt self, even the whole adoption right now will adopt. But we get peace. We don't take them too much. But you know we adopt this, you never switch for me.
Chair, the APC withdrawing from governments, how is that in the best interest of the public?
Well, you will see the public asking for do that. When I go, as you go along, you will see the public accept what you will say will do. Because this is a democracy. Democracy, you have to listen. You don't make the rule of people, you have to listen to the people. Not to only APC. This has become very clear. I have so many friends in Sierra Leone and outside Sierra Leone who are Sierra Leoneans, where the great issue with APC members. But what's funny about this government will get that anybody will raise issue about the APC. If even lawyers them, when they talk, the true talk, who will advise, they will take it an APC. Even journalists them, we will talk the true talk, they will say that APC. And this is not APC. They don't elect APC self. We should elect that Sierra Leone. So then elect what they can say, now only APC they against what the SMB government they do. I will answer the appointment, not only APC they against waiting they do so. You have Sierra Leoneans. You have them. So if you don't say don't work well for the people, why you want to make that kind of thing? You have to make the people of the enjoy back. Why you are not going to enjoy the peace and they are not together? But why you can bring Kushkas come back and then the other day back? No. You give people the one thing.
How long the APC plan for the out of government, Mr. Chairman?
As long as if the government come back and respect what you belong to sign for, we'll continue for work with the government. But if the government says they respect the unity agreement and the tripartite recommendations, well, we'll then continue. So be it. What we believe, see, all so God is above everything. You go feel because you control soldier man, you control policeman, you forget God is above everything. God is above everything. This is a fast month and length. Fast month and length. Would they do good for Sierra Leone, a better one? God go see and through. Would they do bad for many country, continue for their ideas too? God go see also again. So man in leadership, you forget God is above all. Yes, so basically, let us be going. But we don't go promoting, we don't go agree or go against the back. The tripartite recommendations, and plenty of abuse. The Commission for Forming a Parliament, you please for that.
Also, while you answer this, then we come back to you. This time when the APC don't withdraw from government, una feel say una they get what una they ask for when are the reversal of Edmond Alpha a appointment as Chief Electoral Commissioner.
Yesterday we get a meeting with the Peace Commission, and the Attorney General was there, and we make them absolutely categorically clear. The APC not to go back into governance with Edmond Alpha as the Chief Electoral Commissioner. We not to go back into governance. And now also say, we don't say them before and make me say them now. This withdrawal from governance, now a step way democratic in terms of expressing with dissatisfaction with the situation. But there are other democratic steps we can be taken where the APC go be willing for take. Because wait till we talk about Mabel, now the future of this country. This not a question of the APC in own interest. This are the interest of Sierra Leone. This are the interest of democracy. This are the interest of ensuring that when person grabna in bed, 3 o'clock morning, go queue for make it put in ballot na the box for select the leader where in feel to say na the best leader for that person in vote go count. So the action where we take now today, now the action for today. But we don't put them to government say this not a red line. And please understand, this not just an isolated incident. Waiting we don't communicate, and waiting at the communicate now is that waiting we see in Edmond Alpha now a accumulation. That's the word. Accumulation, an attitude, a complete disregard for the agreement. You now say gentleman's agreement. Well, not to be in gentleman's agreement. Now be a negotiated settlement between the government of Sierra Leone and the All People's Congress Party. We believe say they were the winners of the 2023 election. That is the stance of our party. We accept for come to the negotiating table in good faith. On the basis say 2023 the election not happen. We are where we are, but we don't want to repeat in 2028. Edmond Alpha on television or on record, on an interview somewhere, we see the video. I'm not sure of the source of what we say. It talk say na inge the game. He say 2028 no go different from 2023. We expect 2028 for be different from 2023 because we expect, see, when we sit down for 6 months around the table and we agree on a set of reforms, we expect their reforms to be implemented so that we get a credible, transparent, free and fair election in 2028. Everything we want to see happen in 2023 will lead to the withdrawal of the APC from governance, will lead to the intervention of moral guarantors of international bodies for let we actually ensure say we move the country go before. We move the country go before. All of that is of no consequence, of no importance.
Madam Mayor,
I don't choose person, and that person don't can dance until we say tin don't be. But not only that, until we say 2028 could be the same as 2023. The APC has said this for us na a red line. This for us don't show we say clearly at this point in time, in spite of all that has been said, all that has been written, the SLPP don't say. Now we may say we not say again. We not intend for let 2028 be different, and we come to the table because we be agree collectively.
And at the table na simple they can go back.
Well, waiting we dey do. We don't boycott. As I say, boycott is not the only movement, is not the only democratic action that a political party can take. There will be more action.
More action like waiting. Now the international community, in this case, now the international community, the APC have up and say, go make una get waiting una want.
To me, wait I go say to you, you go hear it from me.
Wait till they ask.
Salone go hear it from the APC.
Is the APC largely
is a red line. This is a red line.
Is the APC largely line? Madam Mayor,
the APC is an independent political party in Sierra Leone.
Yes, but
we are a party in Sierra Leone.
In this case,
the tripartite.
In this case, Madam Mayor,
the tripartite.
Madam Mayor,
the international partners. It been get international partners. The tripartite don't lead we to.
So in this case,
now the SLPP don't tell we say the tripartite with the international community will be part of. Now been gentleman's agreement. Okay, we be understand say na be an agreement will be taken with all seriousness by a government. We been the portray say they're ready for let democracy be upheld.
In this case, we know say already conversations then they go on between the APC and international community. Una don't they go na embassies, una don't go na high commissions, don't they meet for discourse. The APC believe and rely on then development partners, the intervention for let una get what una they ask from the government.
I don't believe say any political party then in the world way in future they rely on somebody else. I don't believe say any political party in the world we go sit down say, well, we need wait for let people can talk for we. No, there is a role for the international community in governance, and particularly in a country such as ours, who say we get, their involvement in budgetary considerations and, development support. Because of that, they get a role for play. They are stakeholders, in the country. But we own position as a party, not dependent on the movement of the international community. Then get a role for play. But I explained to you, say, the APC, as a party in this country, as the largest party in this country, as the opposition with the parliament, as the opposition with the local councils, we as a party don't make it clear to government. We say so again in the press release from the National Secretary General. We go out last night. We say once more, waiting we bring we come to the table was an understanding, a belief. The government being sincere and genuine in the decision, say, because we've been calm, we say, let me review 2023. They say, no. Let me not review 2023 alone. Let me go 2018, 2012. So all the issues where presidents make reference to, wait till he be experienced in wait till he say he experience, when he in the opposition, we say collectively, let we address all the history. Let we not just left out 2023. Let we address all the history so that together we go come and move before and say 2028 will be different.
Basically, even when I'm in the ECOWAS Parliament, the day I make the case, we, the members of Parliament from the opposition, we may get online meeting. And during the Zoom meeting, I make sure say I inform them, as to how far I don't go and waiting at the way forward. And I go on for assure you say all members of Parliament are in sync with what we do, and then we are in unity. One thing we say, I read the book, and the book say the East always get there too late. It sounds contradictory. How could the East get there too late? The book went on for say it is better to know where you are going than to be thinking as to how fast you can get there.
Yeah. So it better let we strategically position ourselves. Let them people enough feel say they can do anything where they want to do no more. Because now then they in governance, they can do anything. They don't know say even opposition is part of governance. So we need for make I'm very correct to them say no. You know, this now we own country. Now wallow. Nobody know the way in citizenship pass the other person in citizenship. We all now we get this country. So una who can no more and do waiting no more una want do na the country as if the country belongs to una now your own personal property. You see. So basically, I don't update all the members of parliament and we are all in sync. As I talk to you, we are all in sync.
Hearing these concerns that, especially on the side of government, they are not willing to implement some of the recommendations that will ensure that the 2028 elections will go out free, fair, and transparent.
I think our role is to constantly keep on, we're trying to remind everybody about what they signed up for and try and bring them back to, remember when it was, what you went through to agree these recommendations and how, what it took. And because I think, it's always striking, Sierra Leone has been through a lot. You have had some really tough moments. And when I talk to sort of people who are not involved in politics, everyone wants peace, everyone wants stability. They want to be able to get on with their lives. They want their children to have, good opportunity, good education. They want good healthcare. They want, that's the things which matter. So I think our role often is just to remind a lot of the politicians what's at stake, because I think politics can be quite a impassioned experience. But actually, ultimately, what matters is what is happening for people's lives, and then that they can choose who is going to be the leadership or their representation in Parliament and who will do that best.
For the politicians, a lot is at stake currently, especially regarding the reforms that are going on. And when you talk to the opposition and some groups, they believe the president should have used his office and goodwill not to appoint an electoral commission, chief electoral commissioner at this stage, because the reforms are ongoing and part of the reforms has to affect the selection of who is to occupy that particular seat. But the president, on the other hand, has used his own powers based on the constitution and has appointed someone for this position. And like I stated, the opposition believed he should have waited for the process to go on because they believe the person in question, Edmond Alpha, was one of the people part of the 2023 elections that led to the tripartite. What's your comments regarding all of these conversations now? What should people really look out for instead of arguing the president should have waited for the process to go through or allowing the constitution to take its mandate? What's your comments on that?
Yeah, I suppose the different parties and the different will have different interpretations of what the process is. I mean, my understanding of it is that he's essentially nominated and now has to go before a parliamentary committee and then the parliamentary process, and then we come back to this question of and then I hope the MPs take this very seriously. It's, this is their opportunity to question, to challenge. I think we're quite familiar with seeing. It's similar to the American system where they are, they're often having their sort of congressional hearings and they can grill and ask a lot of questions. And I think the question, if I were an MP, the question would be, as an individual, how would he build and maintain the trust of the political parties given the current situation? I think that is that's whoever is in the Electoral Commission has to have the trust and be able to convince all political parties that they are working in a neutral way to run the elections. So, he's someone with a great deal of electoral experience, but I think that's the question.
That entire tripartite process for don't get legislative backing, right? And I think it's a pity that nowadays, right now, government, they say it's not binding, so we go by written binding. As if the government counterparts been see down the road, and they may ensure, say, they may just, kind of lure them into signing, and after the signing, they now stall in terms of getting the tripartite in before Parliament for ratification. So now then they quite clearly correctly tell them, say, oh, it's not binding. We can do them the way we want them. You know, the opposition don't do their homework very, very well. It's a pity.
Of government and the Peace Commission don't begin for talk between them for see how they go resolve these issues. Is there any room for let the opposition push for let these documents go to parliament let they ratify them?
I mean, there's no prohibition on that, to be honest. There's no prohibition on that. The only thing I can say now, the fact that I think, say, because government don't see waiting their head, I think that government would obstruct that process, say, for ratify them. You know, then say they tell away the iron one and they say they will knock them. Now that 10-day way, they immediately be don't sign and then for don't push for let they ratify and want them. But as you would know, implementation don't start. And government don't see, say, if they ratify now, it means, say, you know, so many things that they would want to do ordinarily, they're not going to do. Right? But having said that, let me just say that the government also, especially the SLPP government, not on demonstrate good faith. Because we do international law, they get written and called Vienna Convention on the Law of Treaties. Treaties basically an agreement between two countries, two states, etc., right? And that Vienna Convention, is say anytime when somebody sign an agreement, he bound by the spirit of that agreement, even though they not ratify the agreement. So similarly, if we domesticate that doctrine there, it go mean say since government don't sign this agreement, for God's sake, government for show respect for that agreement, say, government for sure say they want to be bound by the content and the terms of that agreement. And the fact that government begin for implement the tripartite recommendations means say they don't demonstrate a willingness to be bound and to be affected by the agreement. And so, you know, really show a very good and honest picture where on the one hand governments don't begin implement, but when it comes to critical recommendations such as the appointment of electoral commissioners, they now can say, oh, you're not binding. No. It is show say, you know, don't show good statesmanship. You know, don't show honesty. You know, show regard for the people of Sierra Leone. Because all intent and the way you engage with the opposition, now it's a view say we want to improve the electoral landscape. You know, we'll come back in the midst of implementing the tripartite and then go back and say the tripartite not binding. We do go by the provisions of the 1991 Constitution, the very same provisions where you say them for amend and them for change.
Tuesday that of government. Now they don't go back na the table, negotiations they on now for let them go come back into governance. With this issue of trust between the two parties involved, they already don't feel like the government outsmarts them na the first rounds. Then they feel like the government don't deceive them na the first rounds, fool them for coming to governance by agreements way along the line. They not keep to waiting them, they don't promise say then go keep to. What should the opposition be doing at this stage where then they back na the table now they negotiate, waiting for them at the table for from the opposition at this stage? For let back to Osa with this so.
I think in negotiations, you know, the opposition therefore make sure say they get very strong negotiators. I think say Dr. Maya they do really good job. Me personally not be impressed with Dr. Samora Kamara in handling of the entire tripartite process. I think the I mean not that anybody they say, you know, for be friendly to the other side, but I think the lot of hobnobbing not be necessary at all. And I think say the opposition for also recognize say then have been the only representative of the people of Sierra Leone So then therefore represents the people, not just the APC party, we are them party and then supporters. And one party criticism say we me personally don't levy against the tripartite now that's get broad-based representation. So the APC for understand say other shades of opinion not in the room. They not just represent their own interests, but represent the national interests of the people of Sierra Leone.
The APC boycott and the question of electoral trust. According to Mayor Aki-Sawyerr, the APC's decision to step back from selected governance processes is a deliberate and principled political stance. She argues that the move is designed to draw national attention to concerns about the integrity of Sierra Leone's electoral framework. In her words, the dispute is not merely about partisan advantage. Instead, she says it reflects broader questions about institutional credibility, political trust among stakeholders, implementation of post-election reform commitments. The mayor also stressed that the APC believes the appointment of Edmond Alpha contradicts understandings that emerged from the tripartite committee process, which was established after the contested 2023 elections to facilitate dialogue between the government, opposition, and international partners. That process, widely supported by international actors including the European Union, the Commonwealth, and the United States, was meant to help restore confidence in Sierra Leone's democratic institutions. But critics within the APC argue that appointing Alpha without broader political consensus risks undermining that fragile trust. Edmond Alpha's appointment and the viral celebration. The political tension intensified further when Edmond Sylvester Alpha celebrated his parliamentary approval in a jubilant public display. A widely circulated social media video shows Alpha dancing shortly after his approval by Parliament on February 27, 2026, to the popular Creole song Tin Don B, which loosely translates to "Something has happened." For supporters, the moment symbolized relief and victory. For critics, however, the celebration was seen as politically insensitive, given the ongoing dispute surrounding the appointment. Mayor Aki-Sawyerr referenced the video during her comments, suggesting that such celebrations may reinforce perceptions among opposition supporters that the tripartite reform process is being sidelined. The APC had boycotted the parliamentary approval process, arguing that participation would legitimize what they consider a flawed appointment. President Bio's position and the government response. For his part, President Julius Maada Bio has emphasized the importance of credible elections as he formally swore in Edmond Sylvester Alpha as ECSL chairman. During the swearing-in ceremony, the president called for transparent electoral processes, well-prepared elections, credible democratic institutions. The government has framed Alpha's appointment as part of its commitment to strengthening electoral management. However, critics say that credibility cannot be built solely through official statements. They argue that public confidence in election institutions must also be politically inclusive. Parliamentary and legal perspectives. Inside Parliament, the debate over the boycott continues. Minority Leader Honorable Abdul Kargbo has reaffirmed the APC's decision to maintain its withdrawal from certain governance engagements, describing the move as a necessary political response to unresolved electoral grievances. Meanwhile, legal analyst Augustine Sori Sengbe Mara has raised another dimension of the debate. He argues that the tripartite committee process should have had formal legislative backing, which might have helped avoid disputes over interpretation and implementation. Without such legal grounding, he suggests, agreements emerging from the dialogue risk being treated as political commitments rather than binding institutional reforms. Africa-wide comparisons. Electoral commissions and political trust. What is unfolding in Sierra Leone is not unique. Across Africa, the independence and credibility of electoral commissions remain one of the most contested pillars of democracy. In Kenya, disputes over the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, IEBC, have repeatedly triggered political crises following elections. In Nigeria, the credibility of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, continues to shape political trust after controversial election outcomes. In Zimbabwe, the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission has long been at the center of opposition allegations about electoral manipulation. And in Ghana, which is often cited as a democratic success story, electoral credibility has been sustained partly because major political actors broadly accept the neutrality of the Electoral Commission. The Sierra Leone case illustrates a familiar African dilemma. Democratic institutions may exist on paper, but their legitimacy ultimately depends on whether both winners and losers trust them. Without that trust, elections risk becoming sources of instability rather than instruments of democratic legitimacy. The politics of boycotts in African democracies. Political boycotts have historically played complex roles in African politics. In some cases, they have served as legitimate tools of protest. For example, in Ethiopia, opposition boycotts have been used to protest electoral restrictions. In Sudan, opposition groups have boycotted processes they considered illegitimate. In Zimbabwe, opposition parties have at times withdrawn from parliamentary activities to highlight governance concerns. However, boycotts also carry risks. They can unintentionally strengthen ruling parties by reducing institutional opposition. This is why many political analysts argue that reform negotiations are often more effective than withdrawal strategies. For Sierra Leone, the challenge will be balancing political protest with continued institutional engagement. Before we continue this critical discussion, let me pause for a moment. If you value deep analysis of African politics and governance, please like this video, share it with others, leave your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the Bold African Voice. Your support helps us continue bringing independent African analysis to audiences across the continent and the diaspora. And now, let's continue. The Tripartite Agreement, a missed opportunity? The current dispute also raises an important question. Was the tripartite dialogue process adequately structured to deliver lasting reforms? The dialogue was meant to address electoral transparency concerns, institutional reform commitments, post-election reconciliation. But critics argue that without clear timelines, legal mechanisms, and enforcement frameworks, the process may struggle to translate political dialogue into institutional change. This is a challenge that many African reconciliation processes face. Dialogue initiatives often generate symbolic political goodwill, but implementation frequently becomes the most difficult phase. The social media factor and public perception. Another dimension shaping this controversy is the role of social media in modern African politics. The viral video of Edmond Alpha's celebration spread rapidly across platforms such as Facebook, WhatsApp, TikTok, X, formerly Twitter. In today's digital political environment, optics can be as powerful as policy decisions. What might once have been a private moment of celebration can now quickly become a national political symbol. And in polarized political environments, such images can reinforce existing narratives on both sides. What this means for Sierra Leone's democratic future. Ultimately, the dispute over the ECSL leadership is about more than one appointment. It raises deeper structural questions. Can Sierra Leone rebuild cross-party trust after the 2023 elections? Will the tripartite reform commitments be fully implemented? Can electoral institutions command broad national confidence? The answers to these questions will shape the credibility of future elections in Sierra Leone. And perhaps more importantly, they will determine whether the country continues its fragile democratic consolidation or slides into a deeper cycle of political mistrust. Because across Africa, the lesson is increasingly clear. Democracy does not collapse only through coups. Sometimes it erodes slowly through institutional distrust and political polarization. And in Sierra Leone today, the unfolding debate over the Electoral Commission is becoming one of the most important tests of that democratic resilience. But the story does not end here, because behind the public statements, political boycotts, and viral videos lies a deeper struggle over who ultimately controls the credibility of elections in Sierra Leone, and whether the country's democratic institutions can survive the pressure of rising political polarization. The deeper political context, why the ECSL appointment has become a national flashpoint. To fully understand why the appointment of Edmond Sylvester Alpha as chairman of the Electoral Commission for Sierra Leone, ECSL, has generated such intense debate, it is necessary to place the issue within the broader political climate that has shaped Sierra Leone since the June 2023 general elections. Those elections remain among the most contested in the country's recent democratic history. The ruling Sierra Leone People's Party, SLPP, declared victory with President Julius Maada Bio securing a second term, while the opposition All People's Congress, APC, rejected the results, citing irregularities in the vote tabulation process. International observers, including missions from the European Union Election Observation Mission, EUEOM, the Carter Center, and the Commonwealth, acknowledged that the elections were generally peaceful, but also raised concerns about transparency in the publication of detailed polling station results. These concerns fueled the political tensions that eventually led to the creation of the Tripartite Committee, a political dialogue platform intended to address post-election grievances and recommend reforms to strengthen Sierra Leone's democratic institutions. However, critics now argue that the controversy surrounding the ECSL appointment suggests that the spirit of that reform process remains fragile. The Electoral Commission at the heart of democracy. Across democratic systems, the Electoral Commission occupies a uniquely sensitive position. It is expected to function as an independent referee, ensuring that elections are conducted fairly and transparently. Yet, in many emerging democracies, the appointment of electoral commissioners often becomes politically contentious, precisely because the credibility of elections depends so heavily on the perceived neutrality of those officials. In Sierra Leone, the ECSL has historically played a central role in managing transitions of power, including the 2007 election, which marked the peaceful transfer of power from the SLPP to the APC. The 2018 election, which returned the SLPP to government. The 2023 election, which has since become the subject of political dispute. Because of this history, the appointment of a new ECSL chairman carries symbolic weight far beyond administrative leadership. It effectively shapes public confidence in the entire electoral system. This is precisely why the opposition APC views the Alpha appointment not as an isolated administrative decision, but as a test of the government's willingness to rebuild trust after the 2023 electoral dispute. The political calculus behind the APC's withdrawal. The APC's decision to withdraw from certain governance activities reflects a strategic calculation. On one hand, participation in governance institutions could signal political normalization after the elections. On the other hand, continued participation without addressing core grievances could risk normalizing what the party considers unresolved electoral issues. Mayor Yvonne Aki-Sawyerr has framed the withdrawal as a way of keeping pressure on the political system to honor the commitments made during the tripartite dialogue. Her argument suggests that democratic engagement must be based on mutual trust. Without that trust, she warns, participation risks becoming symbolic rather than meaningful. But political analysts caution that prolonged institutional disengagement can also create unintended consequences. When opposition parties withdraw from governance spaces, it can lead to reduced parliamentary scrutiny, weakening of democratic checks and balances, greater political polarization. In this sense, the APC's strategy walks a delicate line between political protest and institutional marginalization. The symbolism of the Tin Dawn B moment. The viral video of Edmond Alpha dancing after his parliamentary approval has become one of the most talked about political moments in Sierra Leone this year. The song playing in the background, Tin Dawn B, a popular Creole phrase meaning something has happened, quickly turned the celebration into a symbolic political moment. For Alpha's supporters, the celebration represented a natural human reaction to a major career milestone. But for critics, the imagery raised questions about the tone and optics of leadership during a sensitive political moment. In highly polarized political environments, even small symbolic actions can acquire outsized political meaning. This is particularly true in the digital age, where viral videos can shape public narratives faster than official statements. Political communication experts often note that leaders of sensitive institutions, especially electoral bodies, must exercise extreme caution in public conduct, precisely because their legitimacy depends on broad public trust. In this case, the debate surrounding Alpha's celebration illustrates how perception and symbolism can influence political legitimacy as much as formal legal procedures. The international dimension of Sierra Leone's democratic process. Sierra Leone's democratic trajectory has long attracted international attention. Since the end of the Civil War in 2002, the country has been widely regarded as a post-conflict democratic success story. International partners, including the United Nations, the European Union, the African Union, and ECOWAS, have invested significant diplomatic and financial support in strengthening Sierra Leone's democratic institutions. The tripartite dialogue itself was facilitated in part through international diplomatic engagement aimed at preventing post-election tensions from escalating. Because of this international involvement, developments such as the ECSL appointment controversy are closely watched by foreign partners. Democratic credibility affects not only domestic politics, but also foreign investment confidence, international development partnerships, Sierra Leone's reputation as a stable democracy in West Africa. In a region where coups have recently destabilized several governments, including Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, maintaining democratic legitimacy carries even greater geopolitical importance. The West African democracy paradox. West Africa today presents a striking paradox. On one side, several countries, including Ghana, Senegal, and Cape Verde, continue to demonstrate strong democratic resilience. On the other side, military coups in parts of the Sahel have reversed years of democratic progress. Sierra Leone sits somewhere between these two trajectories. It has avoided military takeover and maintained constitutional governance, yet it continues to face recurring political disputes over electoral credibility. The current ECSL controversy, therefore, raises an important regional question. Can Sierra Leone strengthen its democratic institutions enough to remain firmly within the West African democratic success stories? Or will persistent institutional disputes gradually erode public confidence in the political system? The role of political leadership in diffusing the crisis. Ultimately, political crises are rarely resolved by institutions alone. They require leadership decisions that prioritize national stability over short-term political advantage. Both the government and the opposition now face difficult choices. For the ruling SLPP administration, the challenge is demonstrating that electoral institutions remain credible and inclusive. For the opposition APC, the challenge is balancing political protest with continued engagement in governance. Mayor Aki-Sawyerr's call for the reversal of Alpha's appointment represents one proposed pathway to restoring trust. But it remains unclear whether such a reversal is politically or legally feasible at this stage. If the appointment stands, alternative confidence-building measures may become necessary. These could include accelerated implementation of electoral reforms, transparent publication of electoral data systems, strengthening the institutional independence of the ECSL. The coming months will likely determine whether Sierra Leone's political actors can find a pragmatic compromise capable of rebuilding trust without deepening political divisions. And as this debate continues to unfold, the future credibility of Sierra Leone's electoral system, and perhaps the broader stability of its democratic framework, may increasingly depend on how these competing political pressures are navigated. The trust deficit, the core issue behind Sierra Leone's electoral controversy. At the heart of the growing dispute over the appointment of Edmond Sylvester Alpha as chairman of the Electoral Commission for Sierra Leone, ECSL, lies a deeper and more complicated problem: a widening trust deficit between political actors and state institutions. This trust deficit did not emerge overnight. It has gradually developed over several election cycles, particularly as political competition between the Sierra Leone People's Party, SLPP, and the All People's Congress, APC, has become increasingly intense. For many opposition supporters, the controversy surrounding the ECSL leadership reflects a broader concern: whether Sierra Leone's democratic institutions are evolving toward greater independence or deeper political polarization. Mayor Yvonne Aki-Sawyerr's insistence that the reversal of Alpha's appointment is necessary for the APC to fully re-engage in governance reflects this broader anxiety about institutional neutrality. From the opposition's perspective, rebuilding confidence in the Electoral Commission is essential not only for the present political moment, but also for future elections that will determine the country's democratic trajectory. The historical pattern of electoral disputes in Sierra Leone. Sierra Leone's democratic history since the end of the Civil War has been largely peaceful, but it has not been free from controversy. The country has experienced several moments where electoral disputes threatened political stability. For example, the 2007 elections were fiercely contested, though ultimately accepted after a peaceful transfer of power. The 2018 elections also generated tensions before the final results were confirmed. The 2023 elections triggered the most serious political dispute in recent years, with the APC challenging the credibility of the announced results. Each of these moments illustrates an important lesson. Democracy is not only about holding elections. It is about ensuring that all sides trust the process through which those elections are conducted. When that trust erodes, even technically sound elections can become politically contested. This is precisely why the leadership of the Electoral Commission carries such symbolic and institutional significance. The Tripartite Committee, a fragile political bridge. The Tripartite Committee was created as a political bridge between the government and the opposition after the 2023 election dispute. The goal of the process was to investigate electoral concerns, recommend reforms to strengthen the electoral system, rebuild political trust between competing parties. International diplomatic actors supported the dialogue process precisely because it offered a nonviolent pathway for resolving political disagreements. However, critics now argue that the appointment of a new ECSL chairman without broad political consensus risks weakening the confidence that the tripartite process was meant to restore. Legal experts like Augustine Sori Sengbe Mara have pointed out that one of the weaknesses of the tripartite process was the absence of formal legislative backing, which means that many of its recommendations depend on political goodwill rather than binding institutional commitments. Without clear legal enforcement mechanisms, reform processes in many African countries often struggle to move from dialogue to implementation. Electoral Commission appointments, a common African democratic challenge. The debate currently unfolding in Sierra Leone mirrors a broader issue across many African democracies. Electoral commissions are expected to function independently, but their leadership is often appointed through political processes controlled by governments. This structural tension creates recurring controversies across the continent. In Kenya, disputes over the composition of the Electoral Commission have triggered legal challenges and political protests. In Nigeria, opposition parties frequently question the neutrality of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, particularly after contentious elections. In Uganda, the appointment of electoral commissioners by the presidency has long been criticized by opposition groups who argue that it compromises institutional independence. Even in relatively stable democracies like Ghana, debates occasionally emerge over the neutrality of electoral officials, although the country's institutional culture has helped preserve confidence in its electoral commission. These comparisons highlight a central dilemma facing African democracies. How can electoral commissions be insulated from political influence when their leadership appointments are inherently political decisions? The Sierra Leone controversy therefore reflects a systemic governance challenge that extends far beyond one country. Political symbolism and the power of public perception. Another striking feature of the current situation is how symbolic moments are shaping political narratives. The viral video of Edmond Alpha dancing to the Creole song Tindon B has become more than just a celebratory moment. It has transformed into a political symbol interpreted differently by different audiences. Supporters see the moment as a spontaneous expression of gratitude and joy. Critics view it as a sign of political triumphalism during a time when the country is still grappling with electoral tensions. In the modern media environment, such symbolic gestures can quickly become powerful political narratives. Across Africa, viral moments have often played significant roles in shaping political discourse. From campaign rallies to parliamentary confrontations, social media has amplified the visibility of political behavior in ways that can influence public perception far beyond the original context. For leaders of sensitive institutions, particularly electoral bodies, the challenge is maintaining a public posture that reinforces neutrality and institutional credibility. The stakes for Sierra Leone's democratic future. What happens next in this dispute could have significant implications for Sierra Leone's democratic trajectory. If political tensions surrounding the ECSL appointment continue to escalate, the country could face several possible scenarios. One possibility is prolonged political deadlock, where opposition disengagement from governance institutions continues, potentially weakening parliamentary oversight. Another possibility is renewed political dialogue, where both sides seek a compromise that preserves institutional stability while addressing opposition concerns. A third possibility is institutional reform, where the controversy sparks deeper discussions about how electoral commissioners should be appointed in order to strengthen public confidence. For Sierra Leone, the stakes are particularly high because the country has spent more than 2 decades building its reputation as a post-conflict democracy that has successfully avoided the instability experienced by some of its neighbors. Maintaining that reputation will depend largely on how political leaders manage disputes over institutions like the ECSL. The role of civil society and the public. Beyond political parties, Sierra Leone's civil society organizations and ordinary citizens are also critical actors in this unfolding story. Civil society groups have historically played an important role in promoting electoral transparency through independent election monitoring, voter education campaigns, advocacy for institutional reform. In moments of political tension, these organizations often serve as bridges between competing political camps, helping to keep national discussions focused on democratic principles rather than partisan rivalry. Public engagement is equally important. The credibility of democratic institutions ultimately depends not only on political leaders, but also on the confidence of ordinary citizens who participate in elections and civic life. When citizens believe that their votes matter, democracy becomes resilient. But when skepticism grows, the legitimacy of democratic institutions can weaken over time. The broader question, who guards the guardians? The debate surrounding the ECSL appointment raises a philosophical question that lies at the core of democratic governance. Who guards the guardians of democracy? Electoral commissions are meant to guard the integrity of elections. But ensuring the independence and accountability of those commissions requires transparent systems of oversight and public trust. Across Africa, scholars and governance experts have proposed several approaches to strengthening Electoral Commission independence. These include multi-party appointment processes, parliamentary vetting with opposition participation, fixed non-renewable terms for commissioners, transparent publication of electoral data. Some countries have experimented with hybrid models combining judicial oversight with parliamentary approval. Whether Sierra Leone might eventually consider similar reforms remains an open question. What is clear, however, is that controversies like the current ECSL dispute often serve as catalysts for deeper institutional debates about democratic governance. A moment that could define the next phase of Sierra Leone's democracy. As the political debate intensifies, Sierra Leone now finds itself at a crossroads. The dispute over the leadership of the Electoral Commission is no longer just about one appointment. It has evolved into a broader national conversation about electoral credibility, political trust, institutional independence, and the future direction of the country's democracy. For many observers, the coming weeks may reveal whether Sierra Leone's political actors can transform this moment of tension into an opportunity for democratic strengthening rather than institutional erosion. Because across the continent, history has repeatedly shown that the durability of democracy is often tested not during elections themselves, but during the disputes that follow them. And in Sierra Leone today, the unfolding debate over the ECSL leadership is becoming one of those defining tests, one that may shape the country's political future in ways that extend far beyond the current controversy. The path toward restoring political confidence. As Sierra Leone continues to grapple with the political tensions surrounding the appointment of Edmond Sylvester Alpha as chairman of the Electoral Commission for Sierra Leone, ECSL, the central challenge facing the nation is no longer merely institutional. It is deeply political and psychological. The real question is how political confidence can be restored between competing actors who now view each other with growing suspicion. Mayor Yvonne Aki-Sawyerr's position that the APC will only fully re-engage in governance if Alpha's appointment is reversed reflects a deep frustration within the opposition over what it perceives as the erosion of political agreements reached during the post-election dialogue process. On the other hand, the government's decision to proceed with the appointment signals its determination to maintain continuity in the functioning of state institutions, particularly those responsible for preparing future elections. These two positions illustrate a fundamental democratic tension. How can institutions remain stable while political actors still dispute their legitimacy? This tension is not unique to Sierra Leone. It is a recurring feature of democratic politics around the world. But in emerging democracies, where institutional trust is still being consolidated, such disputes can become particularly destabilizing. The cost of political polarization. One of the greatest risks facing Sierra Leone today is the gradual normalization of political polarization. When political disagreements escalate into institutional distrust, the consequences can extend far beyond party politics. Polarization can weaken public confidence in democratic institutions, cooperation between government and opposition, the ability of the state to implement national reforms. History across Africa provides numerous examples of how prolonged political polarization can slow economic development, weaken governance, and erode public trust. In countries where opposition parties disengage from governance structures for extended periods, democratic institutions sometimes become less representative and less accountable. At the same time, governments that fail to address opposition concerns risk creating political environments where citizens begin to question the fairness of democratic processes. For Sierra Leone, the challenge now is to ensure that political disagreements do not evolve into permanent institutional fractures. Lessons from African democratic experiences. Across the African continent, countries have confronted similar moments of political tension, and the outcomes have varied widely. In Ghana, disputes over election results have often been resolved through judicial processes, strengthening confidence in democratic institutions. In Kenya, political crises following contested elections have sometimes led to national dialogue and constitutional reforms aimed at improving electoral credibility. In Nigeria, recurring debates over electoral integrity have prompted reforms in voting technology and election administration. But there are also cautionary examples. In some African states, unresolved electoral disputes have gradually weakened democratic institutions and fueled cycles of political instability. The difference between these outcomes often depends on how political leaders respond to moments of crisis. When leaders choose dialogue, compromise, and institutional reform, democracy tends to emerge stronger. When they prioritize short-term political advantage over long-term institutional trust, democratic systems often suffer. The role of responsible leadership. At this critical juncture, the responsibility for safeguarding Sierra Leone's democratic future rests heavily on the shoulders of its political leadership. Both the ruling SLPP government and the opposition APC must recognize that the credibility of democratic institutions ultimately transcends party interests. For the government, rebuilding trust may require demonstrating a willingness to engage openly with opposition concerns and to implement meaningful electoral reforms. For the opposition, maintaining constructive engagement within governance institutions remains essential to ensuring that democratic accountability mechanisms remain functional. Democracy thrives when competition exists alongside cooperation. Opposition parties must be able to challenge governments vigorously while still participating in the institutions that sustain democratic governance. The power of public accountability. Beyond political leaders, Sierra Leone's citizens also play a crucial role in shaping the future of the country's democracy. Civil society organizations, journalists, and ordinary voters all contribute to the ecosystem of accountability that sustains democratic systems. When citizens remain actively engaged, demanding transparency, fairness, and responsible leadership, democratic institutions become more resilient. Across Africa, some of the most significant democratic reforms have been driven not only by political elites, but also by persistent civic engagement from the public. The debate surrounding the ECSL appointment therefore represents more than a political disagreement. It is also an opportunity for Sierra Leoneans to reflect on the kind of democratic culture they wish to build for future generations. Advice to African leaders and citizens. As this debate unfolds, the lessons extend far beyond Sierra Leone. Across Africa, democratic institutions are still evolving, and moments of political tension often reveal both the strengths and weaknesses of those systems. For African leaders, the message is clear. Democratic legitimacy is not sustained solely through constitutional authority. It must also be reinforced through inclusive governance, transparency, and respect for political pluralism. Leaders who prioritize institutional credibility over short-term political advantage ultimately strengthen the stability of their nations. For African citizens, the responsibility is equally important. Democracy cannot survive without active and informed participation from the people. Citizens must continue to demand accountability, defend democratic norms, and reject political narratives that promote division or undermine institutional trust. Summary of the key messages. The unfolding dispute over the appointment of Edmond Sylvester Alpha as chairman of the Electoral Commission for Sierra Leone highlights several important realities about democracy in Sierra Leone and across Africa. First, electoral institutions remain the backbone of democratic legitimacy, and public confidence in those institutions is essential for political stability. Second, political dialogue and institutional reform are critical tools for resolving electoral disputes, particularly in societies where democratic systems are still maturing. Third, symbolism and public perception matter deeply in modern politics, especially in an era where social media can amplify political narratives rapidly. Fourth, the controversy underscores a broader continental challenge: how African democracies can design electoral institutions that are both legally independent and widely trusted by all political actors. And finally, the current debate serves as a reminder that the strength of democracy is often tested not during peaceful elections, but during the difficult political conversations that follow them. For Sierra Leone, the coming months will determine whether this moment of tension becomes a catalyst for democratic renewal, or another chapter in the long struggle to build institutions that command universal trust. And as the political drama continues to unfold, one thing remains certain. The future credibility of Sierra Leone's democracy will depend not only on the decisions made in government offices and parliamentary chambers, but also on the collective wisdom and responsibility of leaders and citizens across the nation. Thank you for watching BAV Inside Salon on the Bold African Voice. If you found this analysis insightful, please like this video, share it with others, leave your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the Bold African Voice. Your support helps us continue delivering independent African journalism and deep political analysis that amplifies the voices and stories of our continent. Remember, Africa's future depends on informed citizens and accountable leadership. Until next time, I am Ahisatu Kamara Kargbo, and this is the Bold African Voice, where Africa speaks with clarity, courage, and conviction.